I think it was obvious that I was going to do this video eventually. And yes, I will get to the second, third, and fourth movies since I already did my review on the fifth and sixth movies. So, Wes Craven reinvented and revitalized the slasher horror genre with this modern horror classic, which manages to be funny, clever, and scary as a fright-masked knife maniac stalks high school students in middle-class suburbia. Craven is happy to provide both tension and self-parody as the body count mounts, but the victims aren't always the ones you'd expect. Now, the movie came out in 1996. The budget on the film was $15 million, with the box office being $173 million. That's pretty amazing for a horror film in the 90s, especially a slasher horror film. But as they always say, and as they stated here, this brought about a little bit of a different brand to the slasher horror genre because they make references to themselves all the time. The franchise, that's what this Scream franchise does that, and they always make references to other horror films. So a lot of times, if you really, really know other slasher and horror films, you're going to hear references to Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, Child's Play, Texas Chainsaw, a lot of it, When a Stranger Calls, a lot of those types of movies. Now, the ratings on this movie are between Metacritic, which gave it a 65, not surprising, but I guess a little higher than what I expect from them. Internet Movie Database, 74. Rotten Tomatoes, 81. Google, 86 to 90. Now, I've looked at some of the comments, the negative comments regarding this movie, and I will say, while some of it could be legitimate, some of it is also inaccurate. Now, I will get to what these comments are saying after I read how Common Media breaks it down. What's the story? In Scream, the small town of Woodsboro, California is shaken by the gory killings of two teens almost a year to the day after a woman was similarly murdered. When the victim's daughter, Sydney Prescott, starts getting threatening phone calls from the Ghostface killer who wants to use horror movie rules to play a deadly game, horrific memories are stirred and she's forced to face her past and the killer head on. With the town in chaos, its teen inhabitants celebrate the media circus, led by fame-hungry reporter Gail Weathers, by throwing movie viewing parties and dressing as the murderer, making it easy for them to be picked off one by one. Can Sydney identify the killer and figure out their motive before she falls victim to the same tragic fate as her mother? She'll need to keep her wits and her horror movie knowledge at hand. Now, positive messages. Movies don't make killers. They just make them more creative. Okay, that was a line from the movie, so that was a little... Things aren't always as they seem. Be careful about who you trust. So yeah, the Scream movies they kind of plant a lot of the same message in terms of you can't trust anyone. Looks can be deceiving. You might think someone is close to you, and if someone's your friend, it turns out that some of those who might be closest to you would be the ones who are actually secretly against you. I think all the movies did a good job portraying that. I would say especially the first, fourth, fifth. I would say the first, fourth, and fifth movies were the best at doing that. You could say the sixth movie kind of did that too. Now, as far as positive role models, you have most of the teen characters act hedonistically and display little regard for others' lives and feelings, but Sydney is more empathetic and respectful and also shows great intelligence and bravery, though she does engage in underage drinking and sex, as well as violent acts, although often in self-defense. Now, is it any good? By the way, I don't know why I see kids 11 and under commented on stuff like this. It shows like the age and whatnot. It's okay. There was a comment that showed that, hey, my child was traumatized from watching this movie, and now my child thinks I'm the Ghostface killer. Well, maybe you shouldn't let your child watch the movie. Maybe there's a reason why these movies and TV shows have ratings on them. Hey, this is rated G, PG, PG-13, R, NC-17, or unrated. TV shows are rated TV PG or TV MA or whatever. Same thing with video games, E, M, R, whatever. I'm sorry, is it EETM? Sorry about that. Digress a little bit. So, this film made a huge impact upon its release in 1996, cleverly playing on the horror genre rules in a way that felt smart and fresh. Directed by horror icon Wes Craven, who also did the Freddy movies, and written by Kevin Williamson, who went on to create the likes of The Faculty and Dawson's Creek. Scream brought a sharper level of intelligence, production values, and acting talent to the teen slashers that exploded in ticket sales almost 20 years earlier. The result was a hit that appealed to aficionados with its in-jokes and array of movie references and to audiences just looking for a fun teen slasher with a few good scares and a modern twist. Here, the media-savvy characters are hungry for real-life drama yet desensitized to its outcome, a theme that runs throughout the Scream franchise. Now, for me personally, I wouldn't say that the twist in the end was that shocking or surprising to me. Now, maybe it shocked a number of people. It didn't necessarily for me. Because let's just say the killers kind of made themselves a little obvious in this one, kind of. It's a testament to the original that Scream has continued to make itself relevant to new audiences with 4 more films released over the following, well, 5 at this point, but this was done after Scream 5. 4 more films released over the following 25 years, continuing to attract big names like Drew Barrymore, Luke Wilson, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Kristen Bell, David Schwimmer, and Laurie Metcalf. But don't be lulled by star power and satire. The violence here is brutal, intense, and gory. It is. There are some movies that I would say are even worse, but this one is pretty bad. Though the thrilling pace, high school drama, and steady jokes will likely keep young audiences watching, this movie is best for older teens and adults. Families can talk about why Scream remains so popular. What's the appeal of horror movies? Well, it's like this. So, as they said, and as everybody's always said about the Scream movies, it's just different than the other slasher films in the sense that it references itself all the time. When you look at the other Scream movies, and they talk about this in-movie franchise called Stab. Stab is really just Scream in and of itself. And when you look at Scream 2, they show Stab 1. They're watching Stab 1, and in that Stab 1, that's really just referencing the events of Scream 1. And then, of course, you had, Skeet Ulrich, who played Billy Loomis in the first movie. And then inside Stab 1, you got Luke Wilson playing Billy Loomis. So it's him as himself as Billy Loomis. And Drew Barrymore plays Casey Becker in the first movie. And then in Stab 1, you have Heather Graham as herself as Casey Becker. I think that's the appeal of the Scream movies. It's just so self-referential, and they always talk about other horror films. What was it? In Scream 4, and I should be able to list this entire list because I've watched this movie so many thousands of times. I should have the entire list memorized by now, but I at least have half of it or most of it. There was a scene in Scream 4 where Kirby was going down a list of horror films when the killer was trying to play a deadly game with her. And he said, name the movie that, and she cut him off and said, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, Texas Chainsaw, Dawn of the Dead, The Hills Have Eyes, Black Christmas, My Bloody Valentine, Prom Night, The Fog, Piranha. And it's just, I'm like, she went down the entire list. That's, to me, the thing that's so appealing about this franchise. And as far as what the appeal of horror movies is, I would say what I've always said before. I just think that horror movies are, for the most part, generally more unpredictable. You have some people who expect to get killed off but survive, and then there's others, vice versa, where they expect to survive and they get killed off. Not saying that I like killing or that that's a good thing, but I'm just, again, it's fictional, so it's okay for me to say that. I just think that when you look at action movies and like action thrillers and stuff, it's usually the same thing. Good guys, bad guys. The bad guys always die. The good people usually survive. Horror movies kind of switch that up because it's about killing. That's really what it comes down to. So the movie seems to both parody and celebrate the teen slasher movie genre. How does it use humor to poke fun at horror movie cliches? And how does the violence make it a part of the very genre it parodies? So how does it use its humor? Well, in one scene, there's Sydney talking to the Ghostface killer on the phone. And she says, yeah, I don't really watch horror films because they usually just portray some girl who is always running and gets caught and constantly falls down. And I find that to be a bit insulting. And I think the reason why that was a little humorous is because her character wasn't portrayed as that. She was much more brave. She was much more useful. She survived all of the movies. And so, again, that was a reference to in and of itself, where they were saying, hey, this is how most slasher movies do it. Here's how we're going to do it a little different. Now, here's what I really, really want to get to. This part is going to be more interesting. So I looked at the reviews on Google about this movie. Keep in mind, this is the first movie from 1996. This is what I find interesting. The comments on here might be legitimate and they have substance to it, but they're not accurate because these comments don't even match the movie they're talking about. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's look at this. One person here says, couldn't stand 1 or 2, so I won't watch the other 5 or 10. Okay. This right here, what you're commenting on, is the first movie. So you said, I can't stand the first 2 movies, so I won't watch the other 5 or 10. Okay, so they only have 6 movies so far. As of this recording, they only have 6 movies. So there is no 10. And if you couldn't stand the first one, why'd you watch the second one? But then again, that question is only half hypocritical on my part because I thought Paranormal Activity was boring. I saw the first one, thought it was boring. I saw the second one, thought that was boring. And I saw half the third and I gave up after that. I think I was trying to get into it, but I just couldn't. So, okay, I can take away that part. I don't want to be hypocritical here. But can't stand the end. The guy who was in Scooby-Doo was drooling on tape recorder. Hate him. That was Stu Macher, played by Matthew Lillard. I've seen dogs drool less than him. Okay. This one right here says, absolutely horrible. Poor acting and comedic at its best. Haven't seen Scream 4 yet, but the first ones were absolutely pathetic. As much as Sydney gets beat up in Scream 3, she should be the UFC champion of the world. Toughest human ever. I can't believe I wasted hours of my life watching this series. Okay, well then stop watching it then. Nobody's telling you to watch it. It already made its money. So let me get to the comment that I'm looking for. I really want to find... Okay, here's one. This is what I wanted to get to. This one person here says, she says, I do not recommend this movie. It was a waste of my time. The scenes were so bad, like when in the hospital and no people there, no doctors, nurses, all staff were gone. So fake. I'm not a fan of horror movies at all anymore. Don't waste your time if you haven't watched it. Okay, first of all, look, there were no hospital scenes in the first movie. Now, I think what you're referring to is the 4th and 5th movies where there were hospital scenes. And so in Scream 4, there was a scene in the hospital where you probably had like one nurse walking down the hallway and it was dark and there was nobody there and they're fighting Ghostface in there or the person who was Ghostface and nobody is doing anything. Like nobody hears this. There's that. In the 5th movie, one of our beloved characters was killed in the hospital, in the hallway, gunshots going off, fist fights, people wrestling, glass breaking, no doctors, no nurses to be seen. I get that criticism and that matches the 5th movie. But that wasn't the first movie. This right here is you're commenting on the first movie, which there was no hospital scene. There was no hospital scene in the 2nd or 3rd movies either. Or the 6th one. So that doesn't match this movie. Let's see. I just watched this movie for the first time and what a train wreck. The writing sucked and the acting as well. You would think with all the famous actors in this movie, it would be better. But it isn't. Can't believe Wes Craven is a part of this mess. Well, he made his money. He's successful and the franchise is successful. So there you go. My Little Prince Tobias watched the film and is having paranoia because he thinks I'm quote unquote Ghostface. He threw a beer bottle at my head and only goes by Tatum now. So I'm extremely confused and upset with the effect this film had on my little boy. And he has been trying to jam himself in the garage door to be exactly like Tatum. Okay. Look. First of all, when you sit there and say you're extremely confused, here's the thing. Why is your child acting like that? I'm not confused. I know why your child's doing that because those type of movies have that effect on children, which is why most parents don't allow their kids to watch movies like that. There's a reason why I didn't know anything about any of these movies when I was a child. Now, granted, she didn't say in here how old her child is. So I don't know if he's 4 or 6 or 8. I don't know. She didn't put his age. But let's just assume that he is below the age of preteen. Let's say he's 9 or below. There's a reason I didn't know about any of these movies when I was 9 and below. Okay? I didn't know anything about Friday the 13th. I didn't know anything about Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, Chucky, Texas Chainsaw, like Scream. I didn't know any of those movies at that age. Matter of fact, most of that stuff I haven't even heard of until I was at least 14. Yeah, some people might think that that's late, but like, okay, so what difference does it make? I'm almost 30 now. It doesn't matter what I knew at 11 or 12 or it doesn't matter. I just know that my parents wouldn't have let me watch that stuff at that age. That's why they were scared of the stuff when they watched it at age when they weren't supposed to be watching it. That's why they said they had nightmares or they were scared when they saw Chucky or Freddy or Jason when they were, 10 or something, or even under 10. There are certain movies that just not for kids. Now, again, I don't tell parents what to do with their kids. I mean, I don't have any kids, so I'm not making it sound like I'm not here to give parental advice. I'm just saying that if you don't want your child to be scared of things that they see on TV, I have an idea. Just stick to Disney. Stick to Cartoon Network. Stick to Nickelodeon. Things like that. Or, family-friendly sitcoms. Just have them watch some of the sitcoms you used to watch if today's sitcoms aren't that good. Have them watch Fresh Prince or Full House or something like that. Or Cosby Show or, well, I don't know if they still have the Cosby Show, but, you get what I'm saying. These type of movies aren't for kids. Just saying. Too much blood, too much gore, too much cursing, not that much sex, but still. So that's why you're upset with me, and a little boy had been trying to jam himself in the garage door. So you're going to let your child... I don't know. These comments are hilarious, people. Huge fan of 1 and 2. The acting, this new one was horrible. They need to just stop. I was so disappointed. Okay, to the person who's commenting, what you just said right there, you're commenting on the first movie. This is the first movie that you're commenting on. You said, and you gave it a 1 star, which 1 star, 1 out of 5 stars means it was bad. But you just said, I'm a huge fan of 1 and 2, but this new one was horrible. You know what? If I didn't know any better, I would almost say they probably thought that they were commenting on Scream 5 because it's just entitled Scream 2022. I don't know. I just find it to be hilarious that these comments are matching to this movie, or they're using these comments to talk about this movie. This is not the movie for that. Now, if you want to sit there and say you thought the movie was cheesy, dry, boring, whatever, corny, whatever, you have your own opinion. I'm not saying you can't think what you want to think about the movie, but what you're describing in here wasn't from the first movie. It was from the 5th one, which, by the way, I thought the 5th movie was excellent. I give it a 9, 9.5 at least. This is the worst movie I've ever seen. I was so excited. I wasted my 2 hours. If you guys want best series, watch Game of Thrones. I'm sure you'll love it. Okay? I'll get to it when I can, and once I watch it, I'll give my take on it. Annoying over actor Matthew Lillard. Thanks so much for the fans. The only thing scary about this franchise is their approach to their actors in standing up against genocide. Again, this didn't happen until recently, and I don't know what that has to do with the first movie, but I get your point on that. All right, now let's get to some of the more positive stuff, and then I'll close this video out because it's a little bit longer than I expected it to be. Original Scream movie, the best. Still watch it. Absolutely my favorite. I would recommend Scream because it's scary, and the end had me shaken. The end got a big plot twist, and I would suggest watching it. Scream brings instant nostalgia for any horror fanatic. Great acting, especially from Neve Campbell, Skeet Ulrich, Matthew Lillard, Jamie Kennedy, Courtney Cox, Drew Barrymore, and Roger Jackson, who all played Sidney, Billy, Stu, Randy, Gail, Casey, and Ghostface, respectively. And then you also had Rose McGowan, who played Tatum. You had David Arquette play Dewey. So there's a number of them. So other than that, I would say that this one right here, if it wasn't for the 4th movie, I would almost say it's a tie between this movie and the 6th movie as my personal number 1. But as far as a franchise overall, I mean, as anybody could tell, Scream is my personal number 1 favorite horror slasher franchise of all time. It's going to be very, very difficult for another movie to top that. And if it wasn't for Scream, I'd say next place maybe Halloween. Halloween would be 2nd place. And then you got the Freddys, the Jasons, all the other stuff. But I would imagine I know all the Scream fans seen it, obviously, but other people who call themselves horror fanatics, I'm sure at least 80% of you have seen this movie, maybe 90%. To those of you who haven't seen this movie, I'm telling you right now, you are missing out on a lot. Because Scream is something totally, totally different. The movie's available to watch on Max right now, so catch it while it's available. I got more movies coming soon. Like and subscribe.